Chapter 13, The Big Move. We'd moved from the one room in Chiswick to 2 rooms in Penge, South London. In Trinidad, we'd always lived in a house on our own, so it was very difficult for my family to adjust to living in just 2 rooms with other people in the same house. It was the same for many West Indian families. We were not welcomed in some areas and made to feel that way. There were often signs in windows which read, "No coloureds." Consequently, West Indians tended to congregate in certain parts of a town or city. The different islanders often settled in the same areas. Jamaicans, the largest percentage of West Indians, flocked to the major cities like Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester and Bristol, as well as London. Trinidadians mostly lived in North and West London. My family were among the exceptions, as we ended up living in Beckenham in Kent. My father had come to England to play jazz, and he had fulfilled his dream. He toured all over Europe and Africa, although he did have to work as a mechanic during the day to supplement his income because jazz musicians didn't make very much money. Marmee was determined that we would have our own house, not one that was shared with other tenants, which was usually the case. And she, like other mothers, worked very hard and saved every penny she could. To save enough for a house, we would have taken my parents forever, so Marmee joined what was known as a susu, or a partner, with other West Indian families. This was a group of people who each put a sum of money, say £10 a week, into a fund, and then each week one person would get all of the money. And so it went on until everybody had their turn. Within a year of arriving in Britain, we were able to buy our first house, which was in Annerley near Crystal Palace. And then when we moved in, the neighbours made us feel most unwelcome. They tried flooding the house by putting a hose through the letterbox, and then they tried to stink us out by putting dog mess through it. A few years later, when we tried to buy our house in Beckenham, the neighbours actually called the police to arrest us for trespassing. And when we eventually moved in, many of the neighbours moved out. This was quite a common reaction when any black families moved into an area where mostly white people lived. All this was very painful to bear, but Marmee always tried her best to make us forget the outside world, and she used to encourage me to perform for family and friends, showing them the latest dance and singing while Daddy played the saxophone. Lester and Ellington took up musical instruments and accompanied us. The one addition we thought our family needed to make us really happy was a pet. It was not easy trying to persuade Marmee to get us a dog or a cat, though. We kept telling her how all the English children at school had pets, especially dogs, and what fun they seemed to be having with them, treating them so lovingly. They would kiss them, keep them indoors, even sleep with them. And I was quite amazed by all this because in Trinidad, dogs always slept outdoors and were treated like guard dogs, not members of a family. The only pets that we kept inside our house were birds in a cage. My sisters Sandra and Cynthia kept on pleading with Marmee to get a pet, and eventually she just gave in. She bought us our very own pet, a rabbit. We called him Snowy and we treated him just like a dog. He would stand up on his hind legs and beg for food. Whenever we came home from school, he would give us the biggest greeting ever. My brothers were given white mice as pets, and they took great delight in scaring us girls with them by putting them in our beds at night. The boys thought this was highly amusing, but I didn't. Another way Marmee thought she could keep us happy was by taking us on outings. We'd had some great adventures visiting the zoo, castles and museums. She would pack a huge picnic, buy a Red Rover return bus ticket, and we would roam all over London and into the neighbouring countryside. Wherever we went, people would stop and look with great admiration at my mother. She must have looked like a sergeant major giving her little army orders, and there were never any question of us not obeying them. She was a sort of Mary Poppins, keeping the 6 of us excited and amused, but still under control. Once we'd toured around London and the surrounding area, she decided that we should see other parts of England. It would have cost so much to go by public transport, so she learned to drive and bought a second-hand Ford Zephyr. There's a little picture of that there, look. A few weeks after she passed her driving test, she packed us all up in the car and headed north up the M1 to Leicester to see my uncle and his family. And that was the first of many exciting car journeys. Sometimes we never knew where we were heading, but that made it all the more exciting. However, at Christmas time, on Boxing Day, we knew exactly where Marmee was taking us. I think I've got the wrong page. She would drive us to the West End of London to see the lights in Regent Street. And as we turned the corner of that famous street, it was like entering a magical, glittering wonderland. The decorative lights sparkled high above our heads, and all we could say to greet them was ooh and ah. And then on to Trafalgar Square to see the giant Christmas tree that almost touched the sky. The excitement didn't stop there. The next stop was the Christmas party laid on for the West Indian children, which was always a very happy occasion. That was where I met Santa Claus for the first time. I'd heard so much about him, and when he appeared carrying a huge sack, dressed in his bright red two-piece suit and hat with white fur trimmings, his white curly beard covering half of his smiling face, I knew it was him immediately. I couldn't wait to meet him and get my hands on my present. A gush of excitement flooded through my veins that first time, and I got the same excitement every year when it came to that exact moment.